and blessings. This is Rayesa Gheewala, the Divorced Muslimah Coach. Today's weekly wisdom is all about betrayal through infidelity. And I talked about this topic before, but the live actually didn't get saved. So I'm here to talk about it again because it was such an important topic, and learning and understanding how it is possible to successfully go through something like this, to be able for it to be a win-win for you in this life and the next, is going to be a complete game changer. So, when we're in a marriage, there are certain tenets of faithfulness and loyalty that everyone expects, that are actually mandated by God, right? And when we as human beings, we go against those tenets, it causes a lot of pain and hurt to the individuals involved in their families. And this actually breaks down the backbone of society, which is the family, right? And it also leaves children scarred and even open to repeating generational trauma patterns instead of healing from this and doing something different, right? And so what I'm going to do is actually unpack what's going on underneath the pain and how to turn that into purpose. Assalamu alaikum, thanks for joining. Let me know where you're coming in from and what you want to know more about in terms of this topic, because this is quite a sensitive topic, because it's quite painful. So when we're talking about infidelity, you could be in two categories, okay? So one is somebody who has been unfaithful or strayed, or somebody who has not, but your partner has, right? And it's hard and it's painful for both people on both ends. So the one who actually, does stray and has been unfaithful in their marriage, you have to process and sit with yourself for the mistake that you made, right? And taking that accountability and responsibility of what caused you to step out on your partner or in your marriage, right? And recognize that while your partner may have or could have done things that made you feel like you had no other choice, or wanting to point the finger, it's important in order to do the healing and to move forward. Each person has to take accountability for their own actions. And that also stems from recognizing our own unmet needs that cause us to get our needs met elsewhere and even out of the relationship. Okay, and the person whose partner actually strays and was unfaithful, they're processing a lot as well, because they're dealing with, how does this affect me? How does this relate to my value, my self-worth? How could somebody who took an oath to protect me and to be in a marriage with me, in a committed marriage with me, and be faithful to me, do this to me, right? And how you could be betrayed like this. And that can also bring up a lot of unhealed wounds, such as the rejection and abandonment wound within you. So that can also be addressed in a deeper way. So let's get into a little bit. Oh, from Melbourne, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. So what's going on underneath the pain? So when you're feeling betrayed, or you're feeling like, how could somebody do this to me? How could they betray me in this way? There's a lot of anger. There is so much pain and resentment, almost also too, like, how could I allow this, or how could you even do this? And then there comes fear also, like fear of the loss of the relationship. Then there becomes blame, like blaming your partner for the one who was unfaithful. Why, like, meaning that the blame of the other person, yes, they committed this act of unfaithfulness. However, how you interpret it, meaning like, what are you telling yourself that it means about your value and about your worth? Especially a lot of women, they internalize their partner's infidelity to mean something about them, like they're just not good enough, or they're not valuable or important enough, and they're just lacking somehow. That is why this happened. And that causes a lot of pain, right? Underneath this is what's going on. And they make it about themselves. The act that someone else did, they make it about themselves. Well, it's really not. The person who is unfaithful has to take accountability and responsibility for that. So, sorry about that. So I was saying is that while each person in the relationship does play a role in the dynamic of the relationship, whether it's going to be healthy or whether it's going to be dysfunctional, or whether there is some function in there or not, each person does play a role, but each person also has to take accountability for how they show up and what they're doing, right? Their behaviors and their actions, and we can't take accountability and responsibility for someone else's actions. And then there's the shame. The shame, like, how does this make me look that my partner is cheating on me or has been unfaithful to me? There is even this line of thinking, like, because people have been told, oh, you couldn't even keep your man from straying or cheating, right? And then again, that's also about making it about yourself, and it's also a way to take accountability and responsibility for someone else's behavior and actions. And when we start internalizing other people's actions to mean something about ourselves, it's actually a self-attack. That causes a lot of self-harm. So what do we do here? One of the things is acknowledging that you're having intense feelings and emotions about what you're experiencing, right? And that you're struggling with with processing it, right? And get help. Don't sit by yourself in your own mind with all of these thoughts that are coming through that are hurting you or harming you, because you're not meant to go through this alone. And if you are going through this, that means that there is a deeper meaning, a deeper lesson that is meant to be learned from this. So, first and foremost is turn to Allah, right? Connect and attach to Allah to help you process and guide how to deal with this, right? And we don't want to rely on ourselves or others. We want to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recognize this as a test. This is a test that you're facing, a struggle or a challenge, and you're being tested, and Allah knows exactly what He's sending you and why. So first thing, one is taking ownership. And what does that mean? Taking ownership that you're not the one who strayed, but for the one who did. Take ownership and accountability and responsibility that you had a weakness and you were weak and you made a mistake, right? And it's so important for each person to take accountability and responsibility for their own actions, right? And owning your own feelings, meaning like recognizing if you're feeling angry and upset and hurt, those are all real and true, and you're allowed to feel those things. However, where we want to be careful is that we don't want to lash out with our anger and our hurt and our pain onto someone else, whether it be our partner, our children, or anyone else. And sometimes people may think, well, he deserves it or she deserved it. Well, when we're in a state of hurt, we can justify anything, right? But is that going to be a helpful way to deal with the situation? And everyone is going to have different outcomes from the situation, but how to deal with it, we want to deal with it in a way that's going to be pleasing to Allah, right? So we don't want to lash out and project our hurt onto other people, right? And know that these intense feelings that you're having, it's signaling to you where it is that you need focus, where you need healing, right? Yes, it is excruciatingly painful. But there is like I said, there is a lesson here, and something that Allah is trying to show you and help you with. And the reality is that most of us can't go through this on our own, because what we do is that we default to the conditioned thinking patterns that we've been conditioned with, since our childhood, on how we think about ourselves. So if we're in a situation where someone has wronged us or betrayed us, are we interpreting it as meaning that there's something wrong with us? That's why we can't go through this on our own, because we need someone to help us out of that tunnel vision, or we get just so stuck. We need to back up and pause a little bit to look at bigger picture, and it's really hard to do that when you're in that pain. Again, I talked about personal responsibility and accountability, and not thinking of yourself like a victim, like, that desperation thinking or that defeated thinking, because when we go there, it can feel really dark and really, despair for us. Somebody shared with me that forgiving her ex was one of the worst mistakes that she made. And because she said it gave her the illusion of that he can treat her whatever way she wants. The forgiveness is more about for yourself. It's more between you and Allah, so you don't have to carry that around. And it doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that you don't put up your boundaries where they need to be, so these type of things don't happen again, right? Because if you don't do that, or you feel like, and forgiveness is a process. It's not just like, okay, forgive, and then you forgive. It doesn't work that way. You have to be in that space where you're feeling comfortable to forgive. You're feeling comfortable to release and let that go, that you can move forward without having this heaviness of something that you didn't even do. Okay? Oh, you like those hearts, huh? You're resonating with that. Awesome. Wa alaikum salam for duas, sabr, shukr. Let me know what's resonating with you from what I'm sharing in the comments, and I can unpack that a little bit more, because it's helpful for me to know if what I'm saying is resonating, I'm just talking to myself, or is it helpful, is it not helpful, where are your questions at? So, like I said, I was talking about forgiveness. And it can't be forced. It has to come from within willingly, because if you don't, there's this saying is like, not being able to forgive is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, right? When it's consuming us. So, and the other thing is that knowing that Allah is your protector, Allah is your provider, Allah is your maintainer and sustainer, and Allah is your wakil as well, who leave your perception of what people think of you and your reputation, if you will, in Allah's hands, and let Allah defend you, right? So we don't want to fall into this poor me, victim me, type of mentality. And some of the other tips on getting through this, let me just check my comments here. Duaz Sabr Shukr saying, at times we let go not for our happiness but for the other person. I don't understand what you mean by that. You're letting go, you meaning you're forgiving and forgetting for the other person. What are you looking to give the other person, or what are you looking for the other person to do? Yes, definitely Allah is sufficient for us, right? But as human beings, we have feelings. And we also have to understand, how do we get here? If I understand my value and my worth and where it comes from, what do I allow? What do I not allow? So that's spot on. But I didn't understand what you meant for not our happiness, but for the other person. So let me know what you meant. What you're trying to forgive for the other person. The thing about forgiveness is that it's between you and Allah, right? If you cannot rectify that between you and Allah being okay with what has happened, then you won't be able to forgive the other person either. It will be so much harder to. If you have gotten the healing and you've gotten the reassurance from Allah that you're okay even though this happened, then you can let go, and what the other person did doesn't matter to you as much, because you see it as a reflection of them. You see it as their own struggles. You see it as what it means about them. And then once you've seen that, then you can move forward and say, well, what needs to happen next in this relationship? Is this relationship going to continue on? Can it continue on? Do you want it to continue on? If not, then, this is not okay for me. Then you can move forward in how you're going to navigate where the relationship is going to go, because this is where you get to step into your own value and worth, is by having your boundaries and what you allow and what you don't. If the other person doesn't value you for what you do, well, then, if the other person continues to mistreat you or misuse you verbally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, you have a choice whether you choose to accept it or not, right? And there's no compulsion in our deen. There's no compulsion in marriage either. And marriage is not a blood tie that we're obligated to keep these relations if it's not healthy for us. If we're being devalued or disrespected or dishonored, we have to see that as disrespect and dishonor and devaluing Allah. If we allow that to ourselves, we're disrespecting Allah, because how valuable are we to Allah, right? Allah does not allow oppression for himself, and so he does not allow us to oppress each other, and he does not allow us to oppress our own self. So I hope I understood you correctly, and I hope that helped and made sense in terms of what you were saying. So in terms of more tips on getting through this betrayal and infidelity and come out transformed, because remember, this is a test. You have an opportunity to learn something and grow in your own self and elevate yourself spiritually in the eyes of Allah by getting closer to Allah, by relying on Allah more, right? So who you are, your character, and the beauty of your soul, and how you handle this. You're going to handle it with anger, frustration, and hurt and lashing out, or you're going to handle it with self-care, self-love, and wisdom, that yes, you take care of yourself and you give yourself what you need, and if that means space, you do that. You give yourself whatever it is you need. And yes, dua, sabr, shukr, it is up to us to allow or walk away. But the reality is most of us are not making those decisions consciously. We're making them subconsciously in fear, usually most of the time in fear. Yes, and self-respect, our actions are going to dictate and reflect whether we're being respectful to ourselves or not. We can say we have self-respect, but are our actions reflecting that, right? Yes, exactly. Better to live a life alone with dignity and respect. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be alone forever, It may mean that this is not good and healthy for you. And are you going to allow it or not? And why? Okay, what was I talking about? So like I said, in a test, right? Tests are all about patience, perseverance, salah, taqwa, and tawakkul, right? And that means action. It doesn't mean we just sit around and take and accept whatever we get. Walaikum salam wa barakatuhu, Rahma Beg. Hey Zahra, good to see you. So, right, two things: your relationship with Allah and your relationship with yourself, meaning knowing who you are. And how are you going to know yourself until you know who your creator is, right? So if we really know who Allah is, we will have an idea of learning who we really are. And we've all been led to believe, from our childhood, that we may not be lovable, we may not be, good enough, or we may, only be worthy of such and such treatment or such and such behavior, and then we allow it and we accept it. And the reality is that we're not conscious or recognizing it. It's in the for example, we talked about self-respect, right? How much does Allah respect us, that He has honored us and valued us and dignified us at a highest level compared to all of His other creation? Thank you for the hearts. I appreciate that. Yes. Hey, Islam, Amy, good to see you. Very powerful topic. And tell me why it's so powerful for you. What makes it so powerful for you? Like, why do you feel that way? So, as I was talking about respect, right? So if Allah gives us that position, that honor, that title of Khalifa, of valued, honored, dignified, respected, and go into the Quran, look in Surah Baqarah, you will find Allah telling us these things, right? So if Allah puts us on that, gives us that status, maybe other people may not give us that same value, right? But how are we valuing ourselves? How are we respecting ourselves? Is the way the food you eat, is how you spend your time, the relationships you have, the things that you consume. Are those things, are they reflective of self-respect? Or are there things that you do that are not respecting your body, or respecting your time, or respecting your boundaries, or respecting your spiritual health, right? And it's up to us to figure those things out, because it really does start with us. So if we're not respecting and valuing and honoring ourselves in the way Allah is, then we are teaching and showing other people how to value and treat us by how we treat ourselves. And this is where the awakening comes up, because when we're not aware or conscious to it, we're just reacting and going through life, living, living on autopilot and just going through the motions. And that's where we just don't even realize what it is we're doing. But when we take when we go deep within the self to examine and question and recognize, hey, why am I doing what I'm doing? And am I happy with it, right? Is my soul happy with it? You'll find those answers. And that's why Allah tells us in the Quran to reflect, to contemplate, and to think, to go deep within the self. All right, I got off on a little tangent, but I was talking about knowing yourself through knowing Allah, right? And the second part is understanding your human experience. We are all experiencing life moment by moment, right? And life is only happening in the present moment. So how we're experiencing life, how we're perceiving what we're processing through our eyes and our ears, that's information coming in, and we're processing that in our mind through thought, right? Through our thinking. And so it's so important to understand how our experience gets created. And the reason why that's so important is because we can look at something and we can interpret it, and we can interpret it in a way that our thinking patterns are allowing us to interpret it, right? And then we believe that it's truth. And so when we're in this space of being in our feelings, being big in our big feelings, and I just talked about when we're facing betrayal or infidelity, it can feel like an attack, right? Like how someone can betray you in this way, and you're just flooded with big feelings. So we don't want to act on those feelings of anger, frustration, and hurt. We want to be able to pause and understand, okay, I'm having all these feelings. Let me get grounded. Let me get some bearings on myself here, right? Because usually when we're in this space, we're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do, or I'm going to do this, and how dare he do that? Like, it just goes crazy inside your mind, right? Can anybody relate to this? Like, you get me? Do you feel me here? Let me know in the comments. And so we want to go back to our grounding. Why? Because when we're not on solid ground, we're going to tip over, we're going to fall, we're just going to, it's like an earthquake underneath, right? And we don't want to respond from earthquakes. Okay, so I missed some of the comments here. I'm just going to finish this and I'll get to the comments. That I was saying that just because you think something doesn't make it true, okay? And so, how you're thinking and interpreting a certain situation, and we're always thinking and interpreting a certain situation about ourselves, okay? And how it relates to our worth and our value. And when we don't understand this, we're doing it subconsciously. But when we can start to see it, how we relate everything that's happening outside of us to ourselves, to our value, to our worth. And that is why it's important to know who we really are. And it's important to understand, how we're utilizing our thinking to create our perception, to create our reality, because then we start acting on that. So getting grounded just means coming back to connection to yourself, connection to Allah. And that's our natural state. That's our fitra state, to be in the state of connection to ourself and Allah, which will allow you to be into the natural fitra state of calm, of compassion, of confidence, and tawakkul. That's how we entered into this world. And when we get jarred or disconnected in the discomfort of those feelings, we just get disconnected and we just have to come back. And that's really all it is. And I teach this and I talk more about this in my programs, and I help women to see this in the different areas of their life so they can make decisions and choices during their tests, specifically around divorce and breakup, and creating a new life from a space of clarity and space of wisdom and a space of intuition, right? And we're not going to be able to get that if we're not connected to ourselves and Allah. So let's see what's going on here. Rahma saying hurt and pain. Dua Sabr and Trigger is saying a divorced person gets rejection from people of this dunya. Yeah, that's true. But you know what? Look at that. You're right. But look at how even the Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he got rejected, didn't he? He got rejected for many, many parts of his life. And how did he deal with that? And in the end, the way he dealt with it, what was the outcomes to that, right? So even when people do or say something to reject you, it's not about you. That's about them. You focus on your grounding, who you are, why you're here, where you're going, and who is the one who gives you honor, value, dignity, and respect, regardless of how people treat you from the outside, right? Because Allah is the controller of hearts. He can control anybody's heart to sway in any way, in any direction. So when we hang on to that rope and we chase Allah rather than chasing the people and their perception of us, it's not going to work that way, right? We're just going to be going round and round in circles. So once a person is labeled as divorced, they have to face rejection and judged as bad or not acceptable by the society. Yeah, again, I have a masterclass on my website. If you go to RayesaGheewala.com, and you go in the bio in my link, there is a masterclass that's called Why Divorce is Actually Not a Dirty Word. And it goes through all of these things that you're talking about here, and it debunks all of these myths that even though society is doing this and society is behaving like this, how can you live in society without falling into that thinking, without falling into that trap of buying into that behavior and that thinking, and come out successful in this world and the next? So check out the masterclass and let me know. Yeah, especially betrayal when you are loyal and truthful. That's so true. Because when we show up in a relationship, we expect the same, right? We expect that same level of loyalty. We expect that same level of honesty and commitment. But people are different, right? And people make mistakes. People fall, including us. And when you are loyal and truthful, one of the things that helps in that situation is remembering your intention. And today yesterday I had a session with a client, the private client was talking about, maybe it was today, talking about how in her marriage, she did so much for her husband and she did so much for her in-laws, and she was betrayed But then she realized today is that she wasn't doing it for the pleasure of Allah. She was doing it to meet certain needs on her own. She was doing it to seek validation. She was doing it to feel good about herself, that she was validated and she belonged and she fit in and she was good enough. But no matter what she did, she never felt good enough, because she was chasing a person rather than chasing Allah, and she was looking to people to validate her and to give her and to define her self-worth. And she realized that Allah was in the picture, but Allah wasn't in the picture in terms of I am this intention for what I am doing and being in this relationship is to please you, Allah. And so she realized that, and that's so true, because when we look to please people, to make them happy, to feel good about ourselves, that's a form of shirk. Oh, Zahra was saying yes. I'm sorry. I don't remember what you said yes about. Assalamu alaikum, the Muslim matchmaker. Okay. A divorced sister was proposed by a brother, but his family rejects her because she is divorced once and older than him. Yeah, well, that's also part of Jahiliyyah, right? That's not Islamic. And that's all I'm going to say about that. There's a lot that could be said about that. And maybe it's Allah protecting her, actually, that this is not the right person for you. This is not the right family for you. And this is what I mean about zooming out and looking at things from a wider angle perspective. Not like, okay, I'm getting this rejection. This is not working out. Well, maybe there is a reason for this. So always pray istikhara, number one, and ask Allah to guide you into the best thing that's going to be for this life and the next. And that's what I'll say about that. And sometimes, especially when we're attached to a certain outcome, we're attached to getting married to a particular person, it could be hard to swallow that you're not getting what you want. You're getting what Allah decides is best for you. And sometimes that could be hard pill to swallow, because we want what we want and we think we know what we want and we think we know what's good for us, right? But it's in the surrender, it's in the acceptance of what Allah is planning for you, and embracing that you get that peace and that contentment and that happiness. And then, Allah also rewards you for that as well. Wayakum. So, in putting this all together, there is a purpose behind this test, and it is to heal you, and it is to grow you, right? So, your journey through the test is really looking at it in that way, that you can level up here, and you can increase your rank with Allah as well, right? And this can also be an impetus to in your marriage that heals you, right? Turning to Allah in any test and any challenge is going to be a win-win for you. And you know what? Looking at what has this brought up for me, what has this brought up in our relationship, is going to point you in the direction of where there are unhealed trauma patterns that are going on that can explode into a mess if they're not addressed now, right? And so it's important to whether you get help as a couple or you get help individually, get help. Don't wait for anybody to give you permission to get help, and don't wait to give yourself permission because maybe the other person doesn't want to get help. You get your own help and get an intervention, if you will, because you don't want to spill your own pain out onto others. And let me see what else it's saying. Yes, rejection makes her feel depressed, right? Because there is a level of attachment that has already happened of a certain outcome. And again, this is something that I help teach, is that our job is our intention and our effort. Outcome is for Allah. We leave that for Allah, and we trust and rely on His outcome. And when, we can't, and it's hard. It's because there's a lot of friction when we're competing with Allah. We want our outcome. Allah is choosing this outcome. And we know the only outcome that's going to prevail is Allah's. But it's when we're competing or there's friction here, we're not in alignment, and it is hurtful, it is painful, it is harmful. And the best thing is to turn to Allah with that. And in terms of feeling depressed, to get the help to process why are you feeling depressed, because your depression is signaling to you where you need to heal your own. There's something that's coming up for you that needs to be addressed and healed. Yeah, so when you pray istikhara, if things work out smoothly and they flow, then it's meant to be. And if they don't, like some people are for it, some people are against it, and so, you know, there's too much resistance, then you're fighting an uphill battle, right? And that's not a good way to live life. It's not a fun way to live life. We want to be in flow. We want to be in alignment with our values and who we are and with Allah, right? So next week, inshallah, around the same time, I'm going to be doing another episode on with a special guest on how did we get here. We talked about betrayal and infidelity, and taking accountability and ownership and responsibility. And for the person who hasn't, that means that you don't take on the responsibility of someone else's actions. You allow them to take it. You leave that and you get help for how you're processing this, so you don't hurt yourself in the process. But next week, I'm going to be with a special guest. We're going to be talking about how we got here. Like how is it that in a relationship where there is meant to be commitment and fidelity and honesty and connection and vulnerability and intimacy, that someone is stepping out of that to get their needs met, whether they realize it or not. They have stepped out of the relationship to get certain needs met that are only meant to be in a marriage. And maybe they're justifying it, maybe they're not, maybe they don't realize that that's what's happening. So we're going to be talking about how did it get to this point, and what are some things that we can address and pay attention to, so we don't get to a point where one partner is stepping out on the relationship to get their certain needs met that are not being met. And you know, there's physical needs, but infidelity or affairs are more than just physical needs. It's about a need for connection, which we're all hardwired to have this need for connection with other human beings. Connection first to ourselves, Allah, and then other human beings. And we all are seeking that out. And if we're not authentic and vulnerable enough and courageous enough to expose ourselves in our partnerships, in our marriages, then we're going to automatically seek it out elsewhere. So I hope you join me next week and let me know what you want to hear about, what you want me to answer for that session. And I will take that into consideration. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. I love to hear your takeaways. If this resonated with you, if you want to know more about how you can help yourself and how I can help you, send me a DM that you're interested and you want to know more. I'll be happy to facilitate that for you. Okay, assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings.